Is it safe to say that those who stand behind all of the central banks are from the same group?
That is very safe to say, yes. But it's more than the Bank for International Settlements. The BIS was created in 1930 for war reparations for Germany. But in the meantime, that group didn't just come on the scene suddenly. They're in front of something which has been going on for centuries. If you go back and read what was going on in the Middle Ages, when we had a Dark Ages, we are right now at the same point that we were in 400, which is when we went into the Dark Ages, because their currency failed. But we're at a point that that doesn't have to happen. And as a matter of fact, the chance that it doesn't happen is 90 to 95%, because we know what's going on and we're not going to let it happen.
Tell my viewers what the Federal Reserve is, how they came into this country in one of the worst dastardly acts in the history of our country.
That was in 1913. What they did was they had a secret meeting. Griffin wrote a book on this, and they waited until most of the members of Congress had gone home at Christmas time, and then they passed this legislation. And by the way, the Federal Reserve note is unconstitutional.
Correct. And what Kennedy tried to do and what Reagan tried to do was to essentially uphold the Constitution, which said what? That Congress would coin our money, correct? So there would be some accountability to the money. Am I right?
Yes, but it wasn't just up to Congress. The states could also issue currency in silver and gold. That was something that they were entitled to do.
So Connecticut could have its own currency. New York could have had its own currency.
Some of the states are now recognizing precious metals as currency. I believe 5 of them are doing this.
Wow. So in 5 states, you could go in to a store and have silver or gold and you can purchase things?
I think the way they're doing it is they're actually minting the currency in precious metals in those countries. But yes, I don't think you go into the store as much. But one of the things that I've learned, if you're trying to use gold coins, that's worth a lot of money. It's how are you going to buy your groceries with with currency like that? It turns out that you can press gold very, very thin and put it in a plastic envelope and have the amount of gold equal to the face amount of that currency. And so that's what countries are actually poised to do, to issue real currency, real valuable currency, where you don't have interest charged.
We have a situation in this world where I don't know how many fiat currencies there are, but essentially they're only really worth the paper that they're printed on without the backing of silver or gold, correct?
Yes and no, because don't forget that if countries are responsible for repaying the debt, you've got the labor of the whole citizenry of that country. And what the bankers have done is they've taken the birth certificates of babies and they've estimated how many taxes those babies are going to be paying for in their lifetime. And they've taken that birth certificate and they've floated it on the capital markets and earned money on it.
So they took a shot at how much money they thought I would make in my lifetime because I had a Social Security number, right? And they basically rolled the dice on a capital market and made money off it. Is that what you're telling me?
A lot of money, that's right.
Of every citizen that had a Social Security number?
It gets much worse. Yes, not only that, but if you 2 citizens are married by a justice of the peace, they're not actually married, because the person that the justice of peace is marrying is somebody with capital letters.
The straw man.
That's right. That's right. And without bothering to tell people. And what I just found out a month ago, and this as a lawyer was something which was, it shocked me to my very foundations. What I found out is that the courts that we are going to are not real courts. What the bankers have done is when you go to a bank and you sign your signature card, there's little fine print underneath that says subject to the bank rules. And if you read the bank rules, inside is a waiver of your right to a real court. You have waived your right to a real court. I found this out from, there's a fellow named George Mercier, who used to be the clerk of the courts in New York, and he wrote a paper called Invisible Contracts. So what I did, I sued the World Bank. I bought a World Bank bond, which meant that I was allowed to sue the World Bank, and I sued the World Bank because its financial statements are incorrect. I knew this because as a lawyer inside the World Bank, when I tried to correct a project that was where the board was being lied to, it was a cover-up, and I tried to correct that, I was punished, and the board was never told that they were lied to. Now that means that the internal controls are lacking. Any accountant that tries to correct the financial statements is going to be fired because there's no recourse as an employee. You're not allowed to sue the World Bank. What you're allowed to do is you're allowed to go to an internal tribunal called the Administrative Tribunal. The judges on that tribunal are actually awarded arbitration contracts by another branch of the World Bank called MIGA, the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency, and also ICSID, the International Center for the Settlement of Investment Disputes. They're given very, very lucrative arbitration contracts. So when you're an employee who's trying to correct the records inside the World Bank that are incorrect, you go to a kangaroo court. And so, but because I was a lawyer inside the World Bank, I knew if I bought a World Bank bond, I could sue the World Bank in the real courts. And that's what I did. And I also sued the World Bank's accounting firm, KPMG. And then I went to all of the regulatory agencies. And I went to all the attorneys general because they were required to protect their citizenry from inaccurate financial statements of an issuer on the capital markets. So I used all the securities laws. And very strange things happened with that case. And finally, all of the executive directors and the board of governors, that's the 188 member countries, settled my lawsuit, and the court refused to recognize the settlement. Now I was astonished. How could that happen? That was in 2012. And so it was kind of like a mystery novel to find out how this could have happened. And now I found out what it is those are not real judges. They're not real courts. And what I did was I went and I spoke to the clerk of the court, and I told them about this study that George Mercier had written about the invisible contracts. And I said, how are we going to get this straightened out? And the clerk said, I'd like you to file another document in the court. So I did. Actually, I filed it in the district court and also in the Court of Appeals. And I found out on the 5th of January that the judge, Judge Boasberg, had written a memorandum opinion ignoring the issue that I had raised. Now that's fraud.
Absolutely.
So I went back to the court.
Absolutely.
I went to the chief judge in the district court, Judge Roberts, and I asked him what he was going to do to correct that situation. And he said, well, I'm not going to do anything. So I then tried to figure out what could I do. Well, these judges that are not sitting in real courts have security bonds issued by insurance companies, surety bonds. So I went back to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and I asked them to tell me who the insurance company was so I could file for damages.
Wow.
Yes?
Yes. That cover these judges, is what you're saying.
That's where
They're
we are.
covered. Oh, that's where we are right now.
Well,